Another key concept which was covered in the FalconX B2B Accelerators Masterclass by BV Jagadeesh was the concept of sales.
We did the first company, the very, very first project purely came through a social connection. Purely came through a social connection, right? Social connection turned into a professional connection. And because, in social circles or wherever you meet, maybe meetups or other places, you have to mingle with people, you have to exchange what you are doing and what they are doing. And somewhere along the line, it will click. And somebody would be interested. Oh, wow. So if you are solving this problem, maybe we should take a look at it, right? So build as much personal connections as you can. Every weekend social meeting, social gatherings is a value. Every meetup is a value, right? Every conference that you attend is a value. But don't just stay by yourself. Go talk to people, go exchange stuff, force yourself into a conversation.
Selling something is a very important trait for a startup founder, to be able to sell your startup idea. Not only that, once you have established a viable organization with a viable product, you will have to scale, and the only way you're going to scale is by being able to sell. Unless the product sells itself by the way it's designed, by the way a customer journey is being mapped. So selling is very important, and sales people have a certain personality. Even if you lock them up in a room and say all their activities have to be done virtually, like it happened to us during the pandemic, they use digital tools to connect and reach to people they don't know, they have no clue about, until and unless they do some due diligence, and that is all the information they have to work with. So selling means going out the door, going outside the four walls of your company or of your comfort zone, and meeting people you don't know, or meeting people without expecting that they will buy your product. So let's say you make 100 calls, maybe you may get 1 or 2 leads out of that. So what I learned from the masterclass about sales during the pandemic is sales can be done by any person if they have a systematic approach, using their email communication, using text communication, using phone communication. So these are the different forms in which a sales executive can get in touch with their prospective client. But if you are going to reach out to someone, how will you locate them? How are you going to zone them? So this is all a very intuitive, contextual exercise. If you are going to go to a retail store, a lot of people walk to a particular grocery store or probably a particular condiment store, and they actually go and talk to people. We had one such guest whose segment I will be playing next. His name is Sandeep Chandrasekhar. I also did his podcast.
The kind of technique that smart salespeople, aggressive salespeople actually do it. And it's very rare to learn these things. So I thought that we could have him come and share some of the stuff that he has done, because some of our initial sales guys that we had, this is the kind of stuff that they used to do. Go and discover on their own, right? It's not like the company is feeding them with leads. Real sales guys will go figure out, they discover, they somehow manage to get the leads, and that's how they'll be the number 1, number 2 sales guys in the company. And I have no doubt that there's Sandeep in the next 1 year or so will be in the top 3 or top 5.
Absolutely. From a sales perspective, how tenacious do you need to be? I mean, how many touches does it take to get a response? What's your process of, hey, you don't get a response? How often do you go? What are the different angles you get to? When is the deal really dead?
That's an excellent question. Honestly, everything is situational and context. It depends. For example, sometimes if you want a longer term relationship and you want a longer sales cycle, you have to do more soft techniques and aggressive, very soft and cold type interactions, because it's about the relationship more than it is about the transaction. Sometimes you have only a few minutes with a person. It's about the transaction more than the relationship. So you have to be a little bit more aggressive. So honestly, a lot of this is a very case by case situational business, and how a lot of times if you want relationships, especially in the early stage, stage, you want these relationships to last. Like the early sales, I keep a very, very, very close tab on all of the existing tabs because I want a good customer experience both ways. I want them to I get to learn the service a lot better, the customer pain points a lot better. So you got to work with them a lot closely. Obviously, when you scale, you can't personalize the information a lot deeper. So that changes. And some of the sales are not high value and you don't have the energy. We all have limited amount of time, energy, and resources. So it's about like allocating that properly and kind of prioritizing what's worth it and what's not. But at the early stage, every single interaction matters, and it's going to take a lot of iterations to get it right.
So he talks about how email and text and phone communication, in-person interaction, all of these things can be blended into a very successful recipe, and then you can achieve good leads. When I say good leads, this means you are increasing the likelihood of somebody writing a check or purchasing your product, which is very important. When you're a startup, you're building a product, you want it to sell, and if you want to grow your organization, the selling has to multiply, it has to scale, and this happens only through sales. So this is a very difficult mile to walk, lots of uncertainties as in a startup journey, but in the masterclass they gave us a playbook on how to reach out to clients, how to maximize and optimize managing a sales organization, and a couple of nuggets I will be playing in the next segment. Another important concept which we talked about in the workshop, which is also I feel a very important startup trend or startup facet which startup founders should be really aware of, is the go-to-market strategy. All the efforts you put in as a startup start funneling down into one particular point of focus, that is your customer segment. Who is your customer segment, and why is it that you are going after this particular vertical and customers in that vertical, in that particular zone? Why did you pick this customer, and what is it that your organization can offer them, so that once this customer is happy, you start scaling your organization, your product starts getting wider reception, and this is how you start crossing the chasm. If you know the concept of crossing the chasm, it is when your startup takes off slowly and then there is a point where there is no market, you feel there's no market, and then suddenly you feel there's a huge market. So this whole process of going from zero revenue to start monetizing, it depends on this whole concept of go to market, which is the customer segment you're going after, and why is it that you're going after them, and what is it that your organization can do to maximize all the resources you have inside the organization. If you pick the wrong customer segment, you're going to go about in circles. The very first cold call you have to make to your customer, who is that customer? Is it a youth? Is it an entrepreneur? Is it somebody who is very seasoned entrepreneur? Is it an educational institution? Is it a healthcare institution? You have to be super duper clear about this, so you're not wasting your sales or marketing dollars going around in circles. So go-to-market strategy is that one strategy which will make sure you get maximum bang for the buck for your startup dollar. With the limited resources of time, money, and people you have in a startup or any organization for that matter, your go-to-market strategy is like the guiding light which tells you where to put your efforts. It's that strategic path you walk towards your customer with your organization's offering. So we had seasoned experts come in and talk about this in the workshop, and here is a clip which will showcase what kind of discussions we had.
Now, the problem that I'm trying to solve is the limited resources that everybody has in any startup or any company, the financial resources, the human resources, the marketing, engineering. And how do you take those resources to grow a market? And because you can't go everywhere, you can't cold call everybody and everyone in a country that's as big as the United States, or even in Asia or in Europe. So speed to market suffers if you don't have a systematic, programmatic strategy which allows you for course correction. Without a strategy, then you're just blindly cold calling people. I mean, that's valuable to a point, but after a while, you run out of gas.
And it is something for you to think about, the why of your go-to-market. Why am I going after this particular customer? How much money will I make after I go to this customer? So this is one of the top startup concepts, trends you're supposed to be looking at. How did Slack, define its go-to-market? How did Google define its go-to-market in the early days? How did any other hot startup you're following in the crypto space or in the blockchain, what is it that they're doing to, choose the market and scale and grow? Because unless you show growth, it becomes very hard for you to raise funding. So these are all key strategic elements in building your startup. I hope you enjoyed this entire segment of startup trends, takeaways, and my learnings from the FalconX B2B Accelerators Founders Masterclass hosted by BV Jagadeesh, a Silicon Valley veteran. I also happen to be co-authoring a book with him, so stay tuned. I'll shortly announce it. But it has been a pleasure to share my learnings with all of you, and please continue to work with me, subscribe to my channel, share your feedback, and until next time, ciao.